sato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome to everyone coming on. Great to see all of you here. And we're going to talk about sound sleep today. Okay, so everybody can say, hi-ho!
Hi.
Hi. Okay. So the mantra, for those of you who aren't familiar, is basically, it translates as, lead us from darkness to light, from untruth to truth, and from death to immortality. So we'd like everything we talk about today in the light of Ayurveda to be something that connects us to our higher self, or to connect us to the Lord of Love within. And so we'll keep that in mind and remember that we are all a part of nature rather than separate from nature. And that when we look at the notion of who we are as eternal spirit, that when we connect to that and remember that, then the mind and the body, with a little bit of assistance, support, will come back into a state of balance, or what we call a state of sattva, or balance and harmony. So the notion then of sound sleep, in Sanskrit it's sometimes called bhuta datri. And the sleep is something that's meant to take care of us, and something that nurtures all creatures. Yes, all creatures have some form of sleep sometime. So ideally what would happen with our sleep is that there's a rejuvenation that takes place, that the mind has an opportunity, anyway, to relax, and that it would provide us with mental clarity. In other words, that we're going to clear the slate, you might say, from the day. And so when we look at sleep getting disturbed, it's a pretty common thing in modern living. And primarily it comes from vata dosha being in excess. And sometimes it's also pitta dosha, and there are very specific characteristics that will come with that. So reminder about what vata dosha is, it's the sometimes called the wind element. It's made up of the air and ethers, the ethers being the unseen energies. And this vata dosha then is responsible for the movement in the body. And its qualities are that it's light, dry, and airy. So if we have too much of this, there's too much of that lightness going on, and it's very difficult to calm the mind and the body down to sleep. So some of the things, though, that are very specific in terms of disturbing sleep is becoming overly tired. In other words, pushing yourself too much, what we also call mental fatigue. Some of the other things that disturb sleep are caffeine. And sometimes we have special life challenges going on, or we call it stress, but everything is a stress in life. It's really a matter of our attitude about it and how we approach it. So some of the other things then that will cause the sleep to be disturbed is napping during the daytime. So when we sleep during the day, then it increases the kapha dosha, or the earth element, in us. And we'll tend to be groggy then during the day, and then there's disturbance in the evening because we've already, you might say, we've already used up our quota, or we've already done as much sleeping as we need to, it might seem. But what happens then is that the cycles of the doshas then get disturbed. Some of the other things, too, that will disturb the sleep is constipation, heart palpitations, and those two are both things, again, that are a result of an excess of vata dosha. When your mind is overactive, meaning you really just can't stop it thinking, and we'll differentiate that from from worry and anxiety and that kind of thing. But let's just say, you've got all these great ideas, or you've got things to do that you think you need to think about, and then your mind is just going, and doesn't want to stop. So this is more of the Pitta dosha, and more of the fire element. And then another thing that's very significant that disturbs sleep is too much use of the computer and television, for example, cell phones also. So what we're going to do then is take a look at what are the things that we can do to stop causing the problem, obviously, is the first thing. And then Ayurveda always takes that approach, that we need to stop the cause of something rather than just trying to treat the symptom. And then there are supporting practices and things that we can do to then, to alleviate some of the symptoms and start to bring the body and the mind back to a state of balance. So I mentioned the things that will cause the sleep to get disturbed. One other one that I'd like to add is that, and this is related to Pitta dosha, and that is that the time for best sleep is between 9 p.m. and 3:30 or so a.m. And because this is the times, there are cycles in the day of the doshas, and probably a little more than we need to talk about here, and we need to keep those cycles in their proper place. And so then sleeping at those times is what's most beneficial, will give us the best rejuvenation. And so some of the things that you can do then, let's say that you're already in it. You're not going to sleep, you're having trouble falling asleep, or you're falling asleep and you're waking up between 2 and 4 a.m. So those are both related to excess vata or vata dosha. And so some of the things that you can do then to help you be able to go to sleep are taking a warm shower, a warm bath right before you go to bed, having some warm milk, actually even warm to hot milk, and preferably cow milk, whole cow milk, and putting in some spices, and in particular, depending a little bit on your constitution, but you can work with a little bit of cinnamon, cardamom, and nutmeg. The nutmeg is very specific for this because it has actually a sedative quality. It is, like anything, if you use too much of it, it can become problematic. But just grating some fresh nutmeg into your cup of milk that's warming, putting a little bit of ghee into it, and then in your cup you can put some honey and pour the warm milk over the honey and have it just before bed and just sip it. If you don't use honey for some reason, or you tend to be a little pitta provoked, meaning too much pitta and too much heat, and especially in the summertime, then maple syrup is a really nice sweetener instead. And then there are herbal teas like chamomile that will help to calm the mind down. Valerian root is another thing that we use to help with sleep. There's valerian that grows in the United States, and then there's the valerian that grows in India, which are slightly different, actually. So valerian in either case, though, is not something to be overused, but if there is tremendous sleep disturbance, it's extremely helpful, and I do have that in the formula. Then the next thing that I would do would be to do a very short meditation. Not to try to do too much. If you're a regular meditator, then you can, of course, go ahead. But in the beginning, if you just can sit with the spine upright for a few moments before going to bed, and give yourself a grounding cord from the base of the spine to the center of the planet, an energetic cord. Turn it on release. In other words, just like flipping a light switch. And just allow yourself to release everything that you're ready to let go of, so that you can imagine it as if you are disconnecting yourself from everything and everyone in order to go to sleep. And then imagining over the head a big gold sun, and in that gold sun, put the energy of peace and clarity and stillness. And then bring the gold sun into the body and into your aura. Now, you can also do a meditation just watching the breath and time yourself. Set the timer for 2 to 5 minutes and just watch the breath and then start to slow the breath down and have it move as slowly as you possibly can. And then start to extend the exhale until it becomes about twice as long as the inhale. And then go ahead and go to bed. There are a few other things that are helpful. Putting a little bit of ghee into the nostrils very gently with the pinky finger, or you could use a cotton swab. Is very helpful. If you already use nasya, then you might just use some extra nasya in the evening. Applying sesame oil to the head and the feet, and particularly the bottoms of the feet, and then put some socks on and go right to bed. Is actually very effective at helping one go to sleep. You can also use oil with brahmi in it, which is an herb that we use for calming vata. The other thing, though, that's very important is that you set aside enough time for your sleep. So, in other words, if you're going to bed at midnight and you have to get up at 5, then you're not setting enough time aside. But let's just say that most of us are going to need somewhere between 6.5 and maybe 8.5 hours of sleep or so. And finding the right amount of time for you, someone, an Ayurvedic practitioner like myself or someone can help you, but really it's you that will know that. In the way that you'll know that is by how you feel, and that you don't have a pattern of pushing yourself in excess and then crashing and getting sick and that kind of thing. So, in other words, that you can keep an even mental, emotional, and physical state. And then making sure that your bedroom is without stimulus in it. And so, in other words, no televisions or computers or those kinds of things in the bedroom. And if you've always had something like that, then you might try moving it out and see how it feels. Another thing that's very helpful is to clean yourself before going to bed. In other words, to take a very short shower or short bath and just reset your energy. So one of the reasons then that we do a lot of the things that we do is when vata gets out of balance, it's very easy to have a sense of being disconnected, and especially disconnected from the body. And there tends to be an overuse of our sense organs. And so our energy gets very externalized. And so when this happens, then the sense organs become quite undisciplined. And it's difficult to be able to draw them in and to make choices that you want to make. So one of the most important things is to look at how you use your senses throughout your day. And that, especially in that time in the early evening before, let's say, between 7 and 9, that it be a more contemplative time, and that you're doing something, maybe reading something peaceful or taking a walk or just sitting and enjoying the breeze of the evening. Those kinds of things are going to help you be able to go to sleep more easily. So those are the things that came right off the top of my head. Ayurveda offers, there's lots and lots of opportunities when there are more specific problems. Sleep disturbance can come from sleep apnea, it can come from acid reflux, it can come from depression, all of which are vata and pitta derangement. And there are herbs that are available to help with all of those situations. So I think with that, I wanted to say one more thing, one more little piece, which is kind of fun, because then maybe in the future there'll be another call we can talk about this, and that is about dreams. When vata is in excess, our sleep is usually very light, and we'd like it to be able to have some deep sleep. But our dreams, in Ayurveda they say the dreams are of 7 types, and 5 of those types are ones that the type of dream comes from imbalances in dosha. So when we have nightmares or dreams where we're repeating something again and again, or certain types of situations. And then the types of dreams, so in other words, as doshas come into balance, then there will be very little dreaming other than something perhaps of the spiritual nature or something that comes through precognition, or seeing something of the future. But other than that, then the rest of the dreaming will eventually minimize and go away. So with that, we'll open it up for questions. So if you have a question, you can just press 1. We'll unmute you, and then you can ask the question. Okay. Hi, Jen.
Hi. You mentioned ghee in the nostrils, applying ghee in the nostrils before bedtime. Would you suggest that only to neti pot users, or is that open to anyone?
No, that would be open to anyone. You don't use a lot. You just use a little bit, just to coat the inner part of the lower part of the nostril. But you put it in just a little, put it in just to cover the hairs there, and then you give a little sniff and gently press the nostrils together. It's similar to the nostril practice.
Okay.
It's also very useful for any kind of allergies and that kind of thing, too.
Oh. One other question I had was about the warm bath, and you mentioned cleaning yourself before bedtime. But if I recall, you mentioned if vata is in excess, that warm showers are actually counterproductive?
No, hot.
Comment on that. Okay, so warm is okay, but not hot.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Oh no, warm is good actually. But you don't. The tendency when vata gets in excess is to want to take very hot showers, and that very hot will then will aggravate the vata even more. So no, they should be warm, and feel warm, but just warm, not hot.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions? Okay, Sheila.
Hi, Myra. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You had said you were going to talk about dreams maybe on a different call, but is there a way to say then that if the imbalances come, or 5 types of dreams reveal imbalances, and then there's 2 that are deeper sleep, does that mean that there are times where you wouldn't be dreaming then if you were in good sleep?
That's correct, yeah. In other words, and the other reason sort of to look at that is that those other types of dreams that come from the imbalances, they're not, in the Ayurvedic perspective, they're not really worth evaluating. In other words, leave them alone and just move on. And put your focus on bringing things back into balance. Yeah, if there's something of a very clearly of a spiritual nature, then perhaps we'll take a look at it. People are always asking me about, evaluating their dreams or analyzing their dreams and that. And I don't know that we need to analyze the imbalances. We just know that there's imbalance, and so now we know what to do about it. And analyzing the content doesn't really make any difference. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Is it Keiko?
Yeah, Keiko.
Hi, Keiko. Yeah.
Hi. I met you in Burlington at the yoga conference, and I believe I went by Caitlin then. But I have a question about sleeping positions.
Oh yeah.
I'm wondering how the positions one sleeps in will both affect the quality of their sleep or exacerbate doshic imbalance.
Okay. Well, there are a few different points of view on this. Some interpretation of that, the Ayurvedic perspective on that, is that if in order to keep vata in balance, you would sleep on your left side, and I believe it's pitta on the right side and kapha in the middle. And I personally haven't necessarily found that to be. I have worked with people with it some and with myself, and haven't found that to be that effective. So I'm not sure about it, but you might take a look at it from that perspective. The sleep position actually can make quite a difference if whatever position that you can, number one, not be resting on a joint that's taking it out of its range of motion, if you know what I mean, out of its optimal range of motion. So, for example, if you lay on your side and you move the shoulder forward, let's say you're on your left side and you move your left shoulder forward, then you're sort of taking that out of place, which is not a good idea. So if you lay on the side, then you want to support the body so that you keep reasonable spinal alignment. Because, again, the spinal alignment will support keeping the nervous system calm talking about it from a Western perspective, which is connected to Vata, or basically is what Vata is. And then, there's a thing that I was taught a long time ago, is that there were some yogis that were actually afraid to sleep. They were not afraid, but they didn't sleep on their back because they said that the demons would dance on your chest. But I was taught that a long, long time ago by a very old yogi. But I find that most people do quite well by sleeping on the back, or sleeping about a quarter of a turn to the side. And you might try the left side for Vata, right side for Pitta.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I think that one of the most important things to do in terms of sound sleep is to really have to step back into how we're living our life. Now, because the sleep doesn't just get disturbed. I mean, we know, well, this happens, that happens, or we say, oh, I'm a person who doesn't sleep well. Well, we get sort of attached to those identities, and it's really important that we start to give up those identities and realize that our life really is in the process from moment to moment. And if I'm making choices that are not, allowing me to have whatever sleep I need, then I'm going to pay a price for it. That's it. And so it comes back to that notion of self-responsibility in our spiritual life. This was something that I'd have to say that I abused terribly in my earlier life, and because I thought I could get away with it. I was raised to have regular sleep, not excessive amount of it. But, as I got to be a young adult, I found out that I could sleep 2 to 3 hours and just go like a maniac all the time. And I functioned quite well, and I did that for a lot of years. But eventually it catches up with us. And it will catch up in the form of some type of disease. And in this case, it would be a Vata disease, which is the majority of disease comes from Vata disorder. So not something, if you're a younger person especially, but it's not something I recommend. There's a saying in modern culture that, as you get older, you sleep less or you need less sleep. And again, what happens is that after the age of 50 or so, we go into the Vata time of life. And in the Vata time if that means that there's already more Vata coming up in us because we're drying up, basically, and the body's getting ready to go. But if we want to have those years be peaceful, to have the longevity that we'd like to have, and to be of good mind and body in terms of our health, then we need to do even a little extra to keep Vata calm during those times. So I'll leave you with just one last piece, and that is that when something seems, like you want more and more of it, or that it seems to get bigger and bigger in your life, then usually that's what's taking you out of balance. So the opposite then is what's going to bring some balance back. And that imbalance, especially of Vata, will have your mind tell you that, oh no, this is good, go in this direction. And I'd suggest not to believe a word of it. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful. Any last questions before we go?
I have one.
Okay. Sorry.
When you talk about doing the opposite of what you're, let's say, craving, how do you differentiate that between intuition?
I guess. Okay. Good question. what happens is when the dosha first starts to go out of balance, which would be very, very small, if any, very tiny symptoms. Say with vata dosha, it would be, you might get a little bit of gassiness in the colon, just a little bit in that. But you're not at the point where you're having a lot of other symptoms, including anxiety and worry and dry skin and popping in the joints, disturbed sleep, and those kinds of things. At that point, it might be that what you desire can bring you back to balance. But then once we get into another stage where there are more symptoms showing up, then you can be assured that it's taking you out of balance. If it's something where there's charge in your voice and where you have attachment, in other words, where you feel like, oh no, that's, I must have this, or it's, oh, I love this, you see. And usually the way you'll know is because the mind will be very active around this topic. Now, when something is coming from intuition, the mind will be quiet around it. And so some people say that voice is a little softer, and often it is if you're used to listening to the chatter. But it will come from a place of certainty, and there'll be a stillness with it that's not with the other. And so that's the way that you can tell the difference. So if you can sit down, take some deep breaths, be quiet, and have it come from a very quiet, peaceful place, then you'll know it's your intuition. Okay, great question. Okay. Well, thanks very much for coming today, everybody. And I think we should put everybody back on the mic. Okay, and now we can say it again. Hi-ho. Everybody.
Adios. Bye.
Adios.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Adios.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Namaste. Okay.
Namaste.
Take care. Bye.
Namaste. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.